state your name, the officer speaking, and then answer the following question. What do you think are the most important solutions at the state level when it comes to sea level rise?
You mean the national level or?
Federal.
That, okay. Good evening, my name is Kristen Carlson. I'm running for Congressional District 15 as a Democrat. I'm going to answer that question by saying there are no simple solutions to sea level rise. We can't build our way out of it. We can't talk our way out of it. I think that the most important thing we need to do first is communicate the problem and the risks to the American public, and we need to implement a robust plan that is coordinated with state, local governments, with communities nationally, and that plan needs to be science-based, and it needs to be equitable, and it needs to be put into place immediately, because we can't, the clock is ticking and we can't keep waiting.
Hi there, I'm Danny Kushmer, and I'm a third-generation Floridian. Grew up on Tampa Bay in the Ruskin area, grew up farming. But I can tell you this, and I am a Republican in this race, and I'm the only candidate in this race on both sides that has experience in working with this. Over the last 12 years, I've worked with the Water Management District. We have worked on redoing the Southern Water Use Caution Area. We've worked on bringing St. John's and South Florida and the Southwest Florida Water Management together on a first-of-its-kind regional water supply plan that affected the entire Central Florida. And also was on the global, one of the candidates earlier said that the governor was not involved in global climate change. I spent 5 years on a global climate change policy committee at the federal level appointed by the governor. So the state of Florida has been very involved in that. And I do have understanding that at Washington, what we can do, Washington can get out of the way of Florida. Florida knows how to fix our problems. We have DEP, we have water management districts, we have 5 of them, and they work diligently to solve our problems on a regular basis. So Washington can restructure the EPA, restructure the Army Corps of Engineers, take those savings and bring our tax dollars back to our state, and then let our regulators here in the state of Florida manage our water systems. We know what's best. What's good in Massachusetts is not necessarily what's good in Florida.
Hey, first of all, thank you all for coming. My name is Andrew Learned. I'm the Navy veteran in the race. I'm the Navy vet running for Congress on the Democratic side for Florida 15, the one we're all here for. I got into this race a little over a year and a half ago after Trump, on his 3rd day on the job, took a briefing from a Mar-a-Lago ballroom and sent a team on a mission into Yemen that got one of my guys killed. We've been fighting against this administration ever since. And climate change is one of those things that I think my generation is uniquely positioned to talk about, because we will be inheriting the 6 to 8 feet of sea level that's going to be reshaping the future of Tampa Bay and our entire generation's future when it comes to how we are going to look at fossil fuels in the 21st century. I'm the only candidate on this stage who's taken the No Fossil Fuel Money pledge, and I'm super excited about the direction of this campaign, because we've been fighting this issue since day one, and we're going to keep fighting it. We cannot let big fossil fuels continue to buy our elected officials, continue to silence us from being able to talk about the incoming climate change that is happening. It's happening every single day. We all see it, we all feel it, and we have to be able to talk about it. And that means we need to make sure that we're going to stop subsidizing fossil fuels, and we just need markets to do what markets do, which is to let renewables take over and own the 21st century energy environment. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Raymonds. I am a candidate for U.S. House of Representatives in Congressional District 15. Good evening, and thank you for the invitation. Climate change is happening, and I'll give you a perfect example of the communities of where I know it's happening. In the island of Puerto Rico, right outside the Castillo y Morro, that's a tourist location where people go. Right at the base of that castle, you have a small community called La Pena. La Pena is disappearing, ladies and gentlemen. Years ago, we used to have a small beach there. We used to have structures on the shorelines. It's all gone. I'll give you another location. On the west side of the island, Rincon. That's disappearing into the sea. Sea level is rising. And the last location, as a pilot which concerns me, is the municipal airport of Capitola, Alaska, which is disappearing into the ocean. They actually had to relocate that airport inland because of high rising sea levels. So ladies and gentlemen, I think we're past where we need prevention. We need to act now. You have organizations like concerned scientists that are ringing the bell. They've been sounding this alarm for the longest time. What you need to do is you start sending your representatives that listen to the people and listen to the scientists and not special interests. I have not collected one penny from special interests, corporate money, oil money. Ray Pena for U.S. Congress. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. My first question for all of you is, low-income residents are frequently disproportionately affected by hurricanes. How can Congress help address this and assist low-income residents when it comes to sea level rise?
This is not true. I think in addressing all the residents, and we're going to have to be equitable in all the solutions, there are some ways, and again, one of the other candidates spoke of it. The Netherlands has managed to keep the North Sea out by accommodating, almost letting the water in, and they do that with canals, they do that with reservoirs, they have all their parking garages have places to collect water. And in the low-income communities, we're going to have to start putting in infrastructures, and they're going to be publicly funded to help put water around, but not in the homes of the low-income residents.
After Hurricane Katrina, General Honore was speaking at an event. He said, if you walk outside your front door and you see water, you're in a flood zone. We live in the state of Florida. We walk out our front door, we see water. In Polk County, where I have an office and have worked for the last 12 years, worked a lot with natural resources in Polk County, and I do believe government has a role in protecting the citizens that they have allowed to build in flood zones. So that role is through some of the Florida Forever dollars, and in Polk County, there's actually some dollars that is brought in and set aside to help purchase some of those communities. And I do believe that is what local government can do. On a federal level, dollars can be earmarked to come down and help support the Florida Forever program.
First of all, I'm not entirely sure what we're talking about. We're talking about building moats around buildings to prevent low-income folks from hurricanes. I will say that when we're talking about hurricanes, we have to do something about the tragic effect of climate change, which means we have to be willing to have the political courage to go after fossil fuels. If we're not going to start looking at renewables, the hurricanes are just going to get worse. And how we help low-income folks who are affected by hurricanes, I've lived this. My family lost our roof in Hurricane Charlie back in 2004 down in Fort Myers, where I graduated high school. We lost our roof and the eye came right over, and it was weeks before we had power. The National Guard had to come in and literally cut trees to be able to get access to the street so we could get out to go get food and go get water. We have to invest in a future where Florida is not going to have to be going through this year after year after year, and that means you need politicians with the courage to call out fossil fuels for what they are. They are causing this problem, and the climate is changing because of it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's quite simple. You just don't let them construct homes on the coast. And when you do, the insurance companies ain't not going to pay those poor folks for their homes that they're going to lose on the shores. So why do we let them build there? We have an emergency in Florida. Our coasts get swallowed up by the seas. So we're going to have to start thinking differently. Thank you.
Some of you have mentioned the root causes of sea level rise and climate change. Are there any specific solutions, such as international agreements, carbon fee and dividends, innovation technology incentives, or other measures that you would champion to deal with the root causes?
Can you start this way again? Yeah.
If you wish, if not, we can
You
switch
wanna
it
go
up.
first?
We can start with you.
I don't want to. Yeah, once you start.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I believe in the Paris Climate Agreements, and I think we need to abide by keeping our global temperatures below 2 degrees. And that's going to take a lot of effort, and that's a mind change that this country is going to have to go through, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
I would echo that. My generation, again, is going to inherit the problems of this, and we should be in the Paris Climate Accords. The fact that we have ceded this space to countries like China and India who are building far more solar panels than us right now. We have to invest. We have to invest in the future. We can't be burying our head in the sands and just praying that the world is going to get cooler as a result. And that is the plan of Rick Scott and Adam Putnam and Donald Trump. That means we need change. If your politicians are unwilling to change, we should change our politicians, and I think that's what I represent, and I would represent for you as your next congressman.
You know, we talk about the different Paris Accords of China doing solar panels. I don't think we want to live in China. China right now, I met with a fellow yesterday that works with Syngenta, a large seed corporation owned by China. China can't even feed itself. China is a mess. What we need to do is Washington plays a role as a leader, as a guidance, to help our local states and our local economies manage what they know how to manage. We talk about fossil fuels. Every single major car maker in this country and around the world builds electric cars. Do we have them? That's a good question. We can do our part. So what is fossil fuels? Fossil fuels are there. It is a bridge. We will get to energy independence. We will. Consumers will demand it. Our millennials will demand it. But it comes through capitalism, not through regulation. It will happen. They're out there now, so we all have an opportunity to buy it. Washington play a role, but it's us at the local level that really needs to invest in our own communities.
I think as a planet, we're all seeing rising sea levels, so I do believe in international accords. I think we need to get back in the Paris Climate Agreement. I realize the current administration has us out of it, but it hasn't come to an end yet, and there's a chance with midterm elections that we could affect policy on that level. As far as federal funding, clearly the feds are going to be the big funders of some of these big infrastructure projects. They give the money down to the states allocate where they want to put it. But I believe that on a federal level we can affect it by requiring maintenance of all our infrastructure at higher standards, and any rebuilding be done not for the current 20-year flood or whatever. All those standards, the thresholds that they have to build to need to be twice as high.
So we got some audience questions, and I think this one could go to the Republican on the panel. It says, how do you plan on influencing Republicans in office to address these issues and create a change?
Well, it's all about leadership. And honestly, it is all local. We all say politics are local. Local people have the control. If we don't invest in our leadership and hire the right leaders to say, look, it's all about the people. And again, we have 5 water management districts in the state of Florida. We have a Department of Environmental Protection. In Hillsborough County, we have an Environmental Protection Commission. There are so many agencies in this state that manage our water and our sea level rise. I've been here my entire life. I've seen it growing up. There have been ups and there have been downs. These agencies are designed to bring down the highs and bring up the lows. So the federal government just needs to provide federal guidance to these people and let our tax dollars come back to our communities where we know how to spend those dollars.
Anyone else want to comment on that? No? Okay, wait. What local issues do you plan to advocate for and act on in Congress? What Florida issues?
I think transportation is an easy one for me. There are clearly lots and lots of other issues, but as far as local funding, I-4 is a mess. We need modern infrastructures. We need not necessarily new roads. We need things like rail systems for smart communities that are going to be built because people are going to be relocating inland. We're going to need connected transportation issues. So that would be number one for me right now.
Well, I do believe also in transportation is key. You know, I've traveled I-4 a lot, and you know, the federal government is woefully inadequate in our transportation, and these interstate systems are paid for through the federal government and through our tax dollars, through our fees that we pay. But unfortunately, we send our dollars to Washington, and then Washington tells our state how to spend our federal dollars that they send back to us. So as what I propose is, again, back to local control, to free up that money, send that money to our state DOTs without all the stipulations and the mandates that comes along with it. And when we do that, then we can spend our dollars the way we see fit.
You know, there's an obvious one, I think, that there's a stark contrast to on this panel, and that is that Kristen wrote a letter asking the members of Congress to delay implementing clean water standards that directly led to today's algae blooms. I would be fighting against Big Citrus and Big Sugar and the organizations that are funding her campaign by the tune of $100,000 to not just lay waste to our environment. We have to stand up. We need clean water in Florida. We need to protect our beaches. It's not just fossil fuels. It's not just offshore drilling. It is the organizations that are right here in our state that are wrecking our environment, and we need to call them to account. We need to protect our clean water accordingly.
My priority as a congressman would be health, education, and jobs, ladies and gentlemen. Right now, I would like to see every Floridian and every American have extended Medicare. That way they wouldn't have to worry about their health care issues. Second would be education. I would like to see all our young people have tuition-free education. And as far as jobs, well, we can do that by creating, getting back $2.8 billion that the Rick Scott's administration rejected on the transportation stimulus package that the Obama administration gave the state. And by doing that, we can create 20,000 jobs by creating a light rail system that runs along the I-4 corridor between Tampa and Orlando. Thank you.
So some of you have mentioned big corporations, and one of our audience members wants to know from each of you if you will pledge not to accept money from corporations and giants like Big Sugar that hurt the environment.
Before I answer that question, I'd like to mention, I think the letter that Andrew mentioned. I was executive director and currently am executive director of the Florida Citrus Processors Association. In 2010, the EPA and the Florida Wildlife Federation entered into a consent agreement, and that prompted the EPA to go into unprecedented rulemaking, adopting numeric nutrient content values that affected all flowing waters, including trenches and canals. This letter was turned into a bipartisan coalition request from the House of Representatives, including Senator Bill Nelson, who asked that the implementation of that EPA rule be slowed down while the National Research Council did some research. And that's what that letter went to. I did it on behalf of the Florida Citrus Processors Association, not me as an individual. It was signed by about 68 different organizations, including a number of counties, public utilities, and chambers of the Central Florida Labor Council. It was requested by many government entities. So I am not apologetic that I was writing on behalf of a board of directors that is in sympathy with citrus growers having to extract nutrients from their trenches and their canals.
To the question of accepting money.
Accepting money. I have no trouble with not accepting money from polluters.
Okay. So we took the pledge to not accept Big Sugar money. We took the pledge to not accept big money from fossil fuels. We took the no corporate PAC money pledge. Chris, I would just point out, anybody can go Google the FEC reports and see that you took money from Big Sugar and Big Citrus to the tune of $100,000 that you just told people you were not going to be accepting that money.
So I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt. If we could please not address specific candidates, we would like to refrain from making it a debate and just answer the questions from the audience since we have limited time.
Well, thank you. And so we talked Big Sugar, we talked Big Citrus, what's next? Big tomato, big strawberry, big blueberry, big watermelon. All of these crops that keep Florida from paying an income tax. Tourism and agriculture. And I will tell you what has destroyed Lake Okeechobee was channelizing the Kissimmee River, which mainlined all of anything that was bad from Orlando, all the toxins into Lake Okeechobee, which now flow into St. Lucie Inlet. Sugar industry down there has systems in place. That water flows south. It does not flow to the St. Lucie Inlet. It is a ruse. It is not happening. I'm sorry. I've been down there. I've seen the best management practices that have been put in place. So, do I take the pledge? I have not taken any pledge, but I've not received any money from them either. But I do support what happens in our state and our agriculture industry.
And if we could have our last candidate answer the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have accepted no monies whatsoever from corporate, PAC, or special interests. The only special interest I have is you, the people that sent me to Washington, D.C.
And some of you also mentioned renewable energy. We have 2 members of the audience who want to know, what will you do to advance renewable energy policy and retire carbon subsidies?
Well, first, I believe in Bernie Sanders' bill that he has on the Senate floor right now is to start taxing carbon. When you start taxing carbon, you start sending the message out. Your big polluters will start getting the message. And that's my firm belief. And living in California for over 26 years, I believe in the wind power, I believe in solar, I believe in using natural gas as an option to coal. Electric vehicles are already running around in San Mateo, Sunnyvale. So the electric cars are out there, and that's what I support. But most of all is the lifestyle that the individual must take. Living in California, you learn to appreciate the national parks, your coasts, the recycling, and so it's a lifestyle you have to adopt, ladies and gentlemen, and I have that lifestyle in my family now. Thank you.
I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, guys. I'm just going to repeat it again because I think it's important. We absolutely have to get off of our reliance on fossil fuels, and that's why I've been saying since the beginning that I'm not going to take fossil fuel money. That's why we took the pledge. I'm glad to see Ray join me in the no corporate PAC money pledge as well. But the way we get past this is we have to stop subsidizing fossil fuels so they play on the same level playing field as the renewables. And that way we can get renewables to be economically viable in the energy future that they are.
I do not support any subsidies for fuel, for solar, for ag, for anything. I think we have a capitalist system. And what really encourages me on a regular basis is the young people, the millennials out there, my children, 19, 28, 31, and 37, that are adopting different lifestyles than I have. You know, I consider myself a member of the Pop-Tart generation. You know, we bought just whatever was in the store. It was all the center of the aisle. The kids today shop on the outside of the stores. They're seeing things differently. They're requiring and wanting transparency from the companies they do business with. What other time in history have we seen that? You can affect change, not Washington. It's not up to Washington, it's up to the people. I believe in our future, and I believe our children will make that future a brighter future.
I think there are federal tax policies, whether they're considered subsidies or not, I would argue they're not, but to encourage green technologies. And I think, I can't remember the question now, but what would I do? I would support federal policies, tax, grants, whatever, to do a better job in increasing green technologies and get us off greenhouse gases.
Our last audience question is kind of a broad question when it comes to the president, so we're going to focus it a little bit and ask you your view when it comes to the president's stance on environmental issues. What's your take on that, on what we've heard from him when it comes to the environment?
I think in the last however many months, it's been 18 months since we've had Donald Trump as a president, I've seen him roll back a number of environmental things. Certainly the carbon emissions, he said, announced that we're getting out of the Paris Climate Agreement. My impression are those are incorrect moves. I would oppose those when I go to Washington.
Agreements are meant to be looked at on a regular basis. NAFTA has been around for 24 years and has never been looked at. The strawberry industry and the blueberry industry in southeast Florida or southeast U.S. is being destroyed by dumping from Mexico. We have to look at these agreements and realize, are they good for America? And if they're not, then we have to make sure they are. So important. So again, what I believe that we need to ensure that our consumers, they will drive the bus moving forward. Capitalism is really coming into its own. Everybody's got a cell phone. If they see a business doing the wrong thing, they're going to be on a picture and they're going to be in the news. So what our president has done is roll back some of the regulations, and I believe our consumers are ensuring that our companies are going to do the right things moving forward.
I got into this fight because the president ordered a mission in Yemen that got got an American killed. And my resolve to fight back against a reckless administration started then, and it continues now. Because this president continues to govern via Twitter, continues to not listen to the advice of his experts, and continues to gamble my generation's future by giving another $1.5 trillion tax break to people who don't need it, paid for by my generation's future. And we are already saddled with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. This is personal for me. We have to fight back. How am I going to, specific on the environment, I think I've answered that question time and time again, so I'm happy to be endorsed by not only Bull Sugar, but also the Florida State Environmental Caucus, Indivisible, Vote Vets, every state and local organization that has done an endorsement in this race has come our way, because everybody knows that we are going to absolutely push back against this administration. That's an awesome. I'm going to keep talking. I don't even know. I'm not going to my
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, basically what we need to do is roll back everything that this president has done in the last 18 months when it comes to our environmental protection, our lands, our national parks, our oceans. As your congressman, my job is to find the federal funding for the FEMA hazard mitigation grants, pre-disaster mitigation grants, your flood mitigation assistance grants, your public assistance grants, and other funding for federal agencies that deal with the high rising sea levels, such as USDA, Department of the Interior, etc. That's what my job is, to find the money for these agencies and for these preventive measures that we're going to have to utilize in the near future due to the rising sea levels.
So our last question is going to be about sea level rise, and we've been talking a little bit about prevention, but now that we're in a mitigation state, I want to ask you, what efforts would you champion in Congress that you think is appropriate to allocate taxpayer dollars to deal with sea level rise?
I think the allocation of dollars needs to be equitable. When I mean equitable, I mean socially equitable as well as geographically equitable. The sea level rise problem was not just exacerbated or dreamt up by people who live in coastal communities. The sea level rise problem has been caused by global warming. And I think that for everybody to have to chip in and help address it and address solutions is equitable. And I also think that back to the low-income communities, there's going to be places where we have to retreat from. And retreating is going to mean new housing. And we have to have smart communities in places that are not at risk, that people can afford to buy and afford to relocate to, and we need to help make that happen.
Well, I certainly encourage smart communities, low-income or low-impact development, and all of those things, which is, make for a sustainable community. And it is about a sustainable community. But it's about us making our communities sustainable. It's not about DC making our communities sustainable. So our local communities, our county commissioners, our city councilmen, that's the front line. That's where the rubber meets the road. So you really need to make sure you elect the right people there. What can Washington do? Washington just needs to get out of the way. Let our monies come back to the state of Florida. Let them come back to the areas that are in need. And then we make decisions here locally. That's really the most important thing. Washington's not about, there are certain things in the constitutions they're not allowed to do. We need to bring that back to us. And one thing I would add to, that I am endorsed by Earl Leonard. So it's my most recent endorsement, and I'm very proud of that. Very prominent educator and superintendent in our community. So just wanted to throw that out.
I always think it's funny that we're all for home rule when it comes to things like bringing money back to the district so that Florida can learn how to spend environmental money better than Washington can. But then we have a governor like Rick Scott who would rather stick his head in the sand and refuse to listen to the word climate change. How are you going to solve the problem if you can't even say the words out loud in Tallahassee? It makes absolutely no sense. We have to be bold. We have to fight these fights. We have to be willing to push the envelope forward. We can't let locals like Rick Scott continue to sell out our generation's future. We have to fight. Kathy Castor, I'm super proud to have her endorsement in the race. She's been a leading advocate for making sure that we fight for a reform to the federal flood insurance program. That work needs to continue, and that means she needs allies in Congress, and that's why she's endorsed me, because she knows that I can win this race, and we can go up there and we can get this done. Because 70% of our tax, I'm going to get the bell again, 70% of our tax base is in floodplains, and we have to do something about it.
Madam Moderator, I believe the question was about funding, wasn't it?
Yeah, where would you allocate tax dollars when it comes to like?
Basically, ladies and gentlemen, what we need to do is we need to repeal the Tax Act that just occurred with this present administration to make taxpayers more, tax-paying here more equitable for everyone. We're going to go after the corporate tax rate, which they lowered down to 21%. I say we're going to take that back up to 35% where it should be. We're also going to close out the loopholes where these top 10 corporations have approximately $2.6 trillion in offshore accounts from their profits. We bring that money back, that's approximately $760 billion into the general fund, which almost covers the $804 billion budget deficit. That's how we're going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, make them pay the fair taxes. Thank you.
Thank you very much to our candidates. And for our closing remarks, I would like to call up Executive Director.